I thought that you might be more reasonable.
Oh, you mean softer? Well, now you know me better.
This Lister is rather eccentric. She isn't always as feminine as some people would like her to be.
Let's take a stroll down Season 1's memory lane as we prepare in excitement for Season 2, which is coming this spring, 2022. But until then, let's enjoy some highlights from Season 1. If you aren't familiar, the background for this show is that it's based off the diaries of a 19th century lesbian named Anne Lister. You can actually buy the book of her diaries, titled The Secret Diaries of Anne Lister. We start the series off in Halifax, West Yorkshire, England. It's 1832, and Anne Lister has returned home to her estate after her ex, Vere, has told her she's agreed to marry a man. Bummer. Who can forget this moment when Anne cries out in pain at learning the news? And that is the sound of 19th century lesbian heartbreak. It's like when Caitlin Stark had to mourn the murder of half her family, including herself. Unlike most of the women of this time period, Anne Lister rejects the role she's been given and instead really takes on the role of a man in their society. She's in charge of their property as her uncle has left the estate to her to run, not her own father. She doesn't see herself as needing to marry a man, and sometimes even laughs and scoffs at her lovers, insisting they must marry men. She is a character in her own life. She has a reputation. People often comment on her appearance, and she really butts heads with the men in this show who don't take kindly to a lady doing what she wants. When the broken-hearted Anne Lister, a.k.a. Gentleman Jack, returns to Halifax, the town is abuzz with the presence of a young Miss Anne Walker. Walker is a wealthy woman, but she's a woman. So she is throughout the series chased after, manipulated, and used by various people. At first, even Lister seems mostly interested in Miss Walker's money, but by the end of the season, Gentleman Jack will find herself in love with the real jewels Miss Walker has to offer: her boobies. Just kidding. Obviously, I mean her heart, the jewel that is her heart. Even before meeting as adults, Miss Walker seemed infatuated with Anne Lister. They'd had an earlier encounter when Anne Walker was a child, and Miss Lister had left quite the lasting impression.
I thought I to myself, I can see that the poor girl already seems thoroughly in love with me.
And she was thoroughly in love with Anne Lister. So much so that they just couldn't help themselves. I dare say they completely forgot about the existence of other people while they were busy making out in places like the living room, in which they routinely have servants busting in and out of to announce guests. No complaints from me, but a few complaints from one of Gentleman Jack's exes, Mariana Lawton, the woman who is the reason for Anne Lister's decision to only wear black clothing for the last 15 years, ever since Mariana got married. What a dramatic lesbian response to the woman you love marrying a man. Enjoy your marriage. I'll be in mourning for the next 15 years if you need me.
I asked her to marry me. But Freddie, you're married to me.
I love that it's 1832 and this still has exes all across the continent. How good is that? Anyways, Anne and Anne's love is truly a love that knows no bounds, except, you guessed it, the bounds of being a lady-loving lady in the 1800s. When Miss Walker received a viable proposal from a horrible man, she is also grappling with what it means to be a homo within her religion, and she essentially breaks up with Gentleman Jack, who gets very angry when Miss Walker says she'll still lend her some money they had agreed on. There's more bad news for Anne Lister, though. She's been having to deal with a thug who's been stealing from her while managing her coal pit located on her property. When Gentleman Jack decides she's gonna sink her own pits, whatever the that means, she can only do it with the help of Miss Walker's money. So the thug, Christopher Rawson, sends someone to beat her up. Like the badass that she is, she fights him off. After getting rejected twice by Miss Walker and Lister hits the road. The highlight of these travels is when Lister finds herself in Copenhagen, socializing with the royal court of Denmark. Oh my god! Look at her in this dress. It looks like she's about to kick everyone's ass. It's as if this is the start of speed walking. This moment right here. Also, how sexy is her backbone right there? God, have I mentioned yet how hot Gentleman Jack is as a character? My god, and how much of that is just pure Saran Jones? I mean, the jawline, the charisma. And after watching a few episodes of Vigil, I give a lot of credit to Saran Jones, who is just as hot and alluring in that show. Lister ends up being called back home when she learns her favorite and closest aunt is on her deathbed. Meanwhile, Miss Walker finds herself mentally deteriorating in Scotland, where she's staying with relatives. She has a attempt, and her sister ends up having to literally help her escape her sister and brother-in-law's home because men, well, specifically the Reverend Amesworth, his sexually assaulting ass, and his hype man, Captain Sutherland, the misogynist husband of Miss Walker's sister.
Well, you don't have to slope off like this. Surely we're all friends. Mr. Priestley.
Sucks to suck, dude. Gentleman Jack's arrival back home is met with the immediate bad news that her coal pit has flooded and will require more money, otherwise she could lose their whole estate after having used it as collateral against a loan. But just when Lister thinks all hope is lost, whose voice does she hear behind her but Miss Anne Walker?
You know, if you asked me to marry you again, I wouldn't say no.
Ooh, that's basically a yes. And it's happily ever after for these two. They make out on a top of a mountain. They go to church, which is practically marriage, if you're Ann Lister, and walk off happily ever after along the church alley. I left out a bunch of stuff, like this guy who murders his abusive dad and feeds him to the pigs. Also, Gentleman Jack's sister, Marion, who is generally overlooked and threatens to attempt to have a male heir so he can challenge Ann Lister's ownership of the estate. Well, I've gotten you up to speed on the important stuff from season 1. Let me know if you enjoyed my recap. I could definitely recap episodes of season 2 if that's something you guys are interested when season 2 comes out. Alright, I'm Amanda, this is my Really Gay YouTube channel, and I'll see you next video.